So we have variables. Variables then, that's a term, we don't normally talk about variables when we're talking about qualitative research. We talk about descriptions, we talk about settings, and we talk about, observations and all those kinds of things, but not much about variables. So we can define a variable by all those terms like opinions and characteristics and what has to happen about that opinion and characteristic and all that for it to be a variable. Again, use the
You have to
word.
assign a number to it. It's the variable.
We have to assign a number to it, but we've got to assign more than one number, in other words, because it's got to vary. If it don't vary, it ain't a variable. That kind of makes sense. What is it then? It's a constant. Okay? And sometimes we just want to limit, or we may want to get at that. Some variable, we may cut it in half or cut it in a fifth and just study 1/5 of that variable that doesn't vary, and it's a constant. Now, what varies? The numbers vary. There's always the numbers. Is it just numbers that vary in variables? For example, ethnicity. What are the numbers of ethnicity?
Whatever you assign, correct?
We can assign numbers. Do we have to assign numbers?
No.
No. What typically, if we're talking about ethnicity,
Say white, Hispanic.
we might say white, Hispanic.
But Hispanic can be white, and you
But
also
can
got
be
Jewish
white,
in there.
you know.
I mean, it's
We can look at the U.S. Census definition of white, not Hispanic. Okay? One of the things we don't typically do anymore, we typically don't look, or we don't ask people for race. It's a kind of biological thing, and biologists or anthropologists or something may be able to get at race, but we don't use it much here in the US of A. We tend to use ethnicity. And remember that our use of ethnicity is as a variable with different ethnicities. We use it to collect data about those ethnicities to inform us. So we have to use terminology that in fact does that. So we may have to get and try to get away from our biases or our own selves and figure out what is appropriate. So in the US, we might use a census definition, but sometimes census definitions, if you were to ask someone ethnicity, how would you do that? You could leave a blank, couldn't you? They could tell you their ethnicity. Tell me what some people may put down. If you say, what is your ethnicity? And leave a blank.
like,
I don't hate to do this, but I'm going to just ask you, what's some redneck East Texan going to put down? What's their ethnicity?
white.
American.
What?
American.
Yeah, you tell you. She's saying, I'm American. I'm American.
Oh, they go to Texas.
Oh, yeah, they made him just put Texan.
That's for nationality.
No, that's just American. I'm Texan. I'm American. By golly. Okay. And we might try to force them into identifying some ethnicity, and they still have a little line down there with the other, and they put American, you know. Accent. I was born, bred here, bred and born, whatever this say it is. My God, I'm working. What are we going to ask them? What choices are we going to give them? One's a blank. That sounds pretty qualitative. Okay? Quantitative. What would we do? Let's see if this is objective.
Quantitative would give them multiple choice answers like such and such, such and such. and
But
just
see,
other.
we already can. We've got to be very careful. We all need to get together and say, are we going to put white, or are we going to put white, non-Hispanic? Okay. Are we going to put Hispanic, or are we going to put Hispanic / Latino, Latina? You know, I mean, we have to be cognizant of or sensitive to all the ways that we might put down African American. Now, for 30 years, I officed next door to a person who many described as African American. He told us, all of us, he was not African American. He'd never been to Africa. He wasn't African American. What was he? This is Dr. Alvin Lark Jr. This Friday evening, they're going to have a big celebration for his 30 years at the Brenham AME Church. And he's retired now and moving to South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. For 30 years, we were brothers. He and I were attached at the hip. Okay? What was he? He was black.
Oh, still is.
Now, you know what? He described himself as black. He wasn't African American, but you know, during the summer and stuff, I used to love to come in and I'd put my arm down and I would be darker than he. It's like, Mark, you're not black. No. Now, he was married to Dr. Patricia. He is married to Dr. Patricia Lark. 48 years now, I think. 1 year ahead of me, or a year and a half, kind of. What was Dr. Patricia Lark? They were from the same community in South Carolina, basically. Oh, she's younger than he is, of course. What was she? She was African American. So, you know, in our quantitative research, there are all kinds of ways that we let our non-objectivity, Kyle, come in, you know. Call it bias or call it whatever. It's a lack of complete objectivity. Because some people would call themselves or him black, some would call him African American. Oh my gosh, you know, he and I, we often had conversations, the two of us. You can't believe what all he was called. Probably, maybe you can. You know, I'll tell you some of them. I won't tell you all of them. He is pretty light skinned, so he's called mulatto. Or he was called, many thought he was Cajun, Creole, or just all kinds of things. And some other pretty derogatory kinds of terms. Well, what's that got to do? What is the stuff to which, generally, when we're talking about a variable, and we assign specifics, different things to that, What do we call those different things? We call them values, don't we? Values are the labels to which we assign different levels of a variable. Okay? Different levels or different kinds, or not different variables. Even a constant gender. Okay? We got to be careful. We need to be cognizant of multiple genders. Okay? But let's say that we want to identify, because of the minority status in here, we want to identify male. Okay? If we assign that one value to that variable, gender, male, and we only collect data for that one gender, what is gender in our sample?
Constant.
It's a constant. It only has one value. Okay? So anytime we assign one and only one value, that's all we get, then that becomes a constant. We can throw away all the females and other genders and just concentrate on males. We've got a constant for gender. Well, let's see. Values and variables, and goodness gracious, and measuring variables. So we said, somewhere or another, we said we're collecting data, and how do we collect those data? In general, across the board, we would say we measure that variable to get its values. Okay? What is measuring then? It's assigning value to a variable. For a specific subject, it's assigning value to that variable through some rubric, some way of assigning value that can be communicated to others so that they can do it the same kind of way to lend some objectivity to it, if you will. Gosh, let's see then. What does measurement do? Measurement of variables leads us to different kinds of variables based on the kind of measurement. Okay? The levels of measurement of variables, and there are 4 of those. So we're maybe skipping around just a little bit. Okay? And you've got a sheet and a third that just has kind of one word on each one of them: nominal, ordinal, integral, ratio. Okay? You go back to the one slide at the bottom of page 2. If you haven't heard me say that before, if you haven't heard anyone else say it, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, and I'll give you the background on that. One of the things as a researcher in using statistics, you must become intimate with your data. Now, the first time I heard that I heard that, the story behind becoming intimate with your data. We used to have a graduate student around here. He actually retired. He worked over in the Core Center as their director of leadership. And Kyle, did you know Dr. Dick Cummings?
Oh, yeah, I believe I met him, yes, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Cummings worked right alongside there with Dr. Ramirez and whatever that leadership stuff in the Core was. And Dr. Cummings did his doctorate with us. And then he stayed here in the faculty and staff for 20-something years. And I'd had him in class, and several years later, he came, it was in a meeting or something, and he said, well, graduate students, I just want you to be sure that you do one thing. You should be sure that you become intimate with your data. I'm sitting in there and I'm saying, oh my gosh, that just is wonderful. That is that just makes me glow. You know, that is so expressive. It really tells you what I think that students ought to do. And I kind of told him that, and he would get this really goofy look on his, really like, dummy, it's your problem. I said, I just like that expression. He said, Briar, you're the one that told me that back in our class. I said, really? Really? I can't believe I ever said anything profound. You know, that is profound. I don't know who I got it from, because I know I didn't dream it up. But that is a profound concept, that if you're going to be a quantitative researcher, you should become intimate with your data. I don't know how to tell you to do that. I have some suggestions. One is, if you collect data with some kind of paper, pencil kind of thing, don't turn those data over to a clerk typist, a secretary, a Jenny Clopton, a student worker to input the data in the electronic form. Do it yourself. So you have to put eyes on every bit of those data, every datum, every number, every value. Okay, that's one way to do it. We'll probably talk about some other ways. But that's a concept you should put in the bank, take it home, and make it happen, whatever that means to you. However you can make it be that you become intimate with your data. Make that happen. Okay? Levels of measurement of variables. Nominal. And now this, one might say, oh, now we're getting into the real statistical kind of stuff. Yes, really does. That's where we start. Okay? Nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio data are variables. Okay? What is a nominal variable? A nominal variable is just as much a variable, just as important, just as whatever is a ratio variable, but for one thing, and that is, again, use the term nominal, sort of the root word of a nominal variable. What does nominal mean?
I referred to it when I was teaching plumbing as nominal pipe sizes. It's just a name. So half-inch pipe is just half-inch pipe. It's not actually half-inch.
Yeah, that's the name of it. That's the name of it. Don't write this down, but my name, according to the government, is 466-785-236. Now, what does it look like? What does it sound like? Oh my God!
You can get it edited out.
Edit that out.
Hang on. Okay, it's at 55 minutes, so we'll edit it out
Okay.
at 55 minutes.
God, what a dumbass.
Like, what is happening right now? Credit card fraud.
Yeah, they won't get much. Anyway. What? Now. That wasn't planned to do that. Just.
I'm just impressed with more than 5 digits.
Huh?
I'm just impressed with more than 5 digits.
Yeah, that's actually my zip code or something. You know, is that a number?
No, that's
It looks like a number,
Name.
but it's a name.
It's not a numerical value.
It's not a numerical value. It is a name. Looks like numbers, sounds like numbers when I say it, but it's really just a name. It's my unique name. It was my unique name. As of Wednesday, a bunch of people are going to have that name. Well, they already do from Experian or whatever that credit bureau is.
Equifax.
Eduvax? Equifax, whatever, okay? So a nominal variable is named. What are some examples of nominal variables?
Political party.
Political party,
Bus route 5.
bus route 5. It's just a name. It could have been called Hullabaloo route. But I think that's the name given to, and they use those things for off-campus routes. Is that right? And on campus, they use numbers, look like numbers. They give
They use a
them.
name and a number. So this
Oh.
is Bush School Route 5, but it's also just Route 5.
Yeah.
Everybody's UIN.
Yeah, everyone's UIN. They look like numbers, but they're really names. But then there are some variables that we use that really are just names. Gender,
Oh, we don't have that.
ethnicity, eye color, place of origin, home state,
The Dewey Decimal System.
the Dewey Decimal System. It's just a name. I wouldn't think of all kinds of variables that have multiple values that may look like numbers, may just be words. They're nominal variables. Okay? Now, just so put that, the best way to know is that variables that are given names for the values. The names may be numbers, but they're not, we don't use mathematical operations with them. In other words, you take that stupid number I gave you and divide it in half, and you don't have half of me. You just have a different name. Okay? Did you know you can take your Social Security number and kind of figure out where you were given that Social Security number?
Yes, I know mine's from Texas.
If it's that 4 something, kind of came from there. And if it's a real low number, it came from the Northeast. And if it's a real high number, it came from the left coast over there somewhere.
What's considered a high?
Hmm?
I said what's considered a higher number?
Over 5.
Huh?
Over 5 or 6.
Yeah, 6, 7, 3, blah, 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 or something, I don't know. As you go further west you go, the bigger the number gets, kind of. I don't know why that is, it's just how they did
Within the
it.
US.
How many
Yeah.
unique names are there
Infinite.
that are unique names that are SSNs? I'm not gonna call it by, just call it a SSN, that's a name. How many unique ones are there?
One for every person, each one would be different. Wouldn't it be like, each one is unique to each person that's alive? I mean, they don't reuse numbers when a person dies, do they?
One of these days, they're gonna have to, because there's not a infinite number of them. How many of them is
You
there?
have to calculate it out.
No, you don't. Just look at it. Again, see, you gotta be a nerd.
Should be like 1 trillion.
That just,
Should be like 1 trillion. There's enough digits.
It's,
is it 1
If you
trillion?
went from all zeros to all nines, you'd have I think 1 trillion.
Maybe one billion.
Billion?
yeah.
999,999,999
But we
plus 0, all zeros, which would give us 1 billion. There are only a billion different
They don't use
unique
double zeros.
SSNs.
So we have more than a billion people in America?
No,
How many people
we
do
got
we
325 million, give or take 20 million.
But you wouldn't have that many because
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, the reason our school numbers have 2 zeros in the middle, or UIN, is so that there's no duplicates with social security numbers.
Uh-huh.
I think so.
Yeah, so they never have social security numbers.
So there's that many less that are options too.
Yeah, they're newer, but theoretically, there's a billion of them possible.
Mm.
We'd never use all of them, but theoretically, there's a billion possible.
That's a lot.
And yes, when I was in, I know, 1969, when I started here as a brand new freshman, my number was 695,319. You can leave that and let everyone know that, because that's not what they use anymore. But then I left here in 1972, took a job, came back in here in 1980, and with my PhD and as an associate professor enrolled in a course. Okay, I hadn't done postdocs, I just decided I'd do a postdoc while I was, young and fresh and stuff, and enrolled in a course. And they gave me a new, I said, no, wait a second, what do you mean you're giving me a new number? You already gave me a number. So they gave me a number 6953190. Now, it's pretty easy to figure out, wonder where they got the 69 from.
So you're enrolled?
The year I enrolled. Every student who first enrolled here in 1969, their first two numbers were 69. And then I was 695,319, 5319, 5,319. Okay? How many different 69 numbers could they get? It was 4 digits.
9,999.
Plus 0000, 10,000 numbers. How many students, new freshmen and transfers do we have here now in a given year? More than 10,000.
Yeah.
So it would never have worked. And then that's sometime or another went back to the UIN. Because after I was 695,319 and after I was 695,319,00, we then used our Social Security numbers
As they use social
for a period of time. Then they figured out that was a dumb thing
I still have my student out there with my social on it.
with social on it.
I don't use it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's-
Because it's not,
that
it's
explains
not,
how dumb that
they
was.
renamed you. They renamed you, didn't they?
Have it for posterity.
Yeah.
That's why all the Scantrons, some of the older editions of the Scantrons, undergrads use at least, they say it's not your social and
Yeah,
like big
not
letters.
just I don't know, do that kind of crazy stuff. So now we have that UIN, kind of looks like Social Security number. It's all of them got, students, I ask students, what's your UIN? And they'll start telling me and I'll write down, how'd you know that it was, I said, well, all of them have 00. The middle there, it's not that bright, But all got it, because no Social Security numbers have it. So nominal variables are just that. The only quality they have is each value is a different name. One name is not bigger, better, less than, more than, twice as much as. There's no assignment of order level to
Work.
that nominal variable. Then we have an ordinal variable. Okay? An ordinal variable. By the word, what does that suggest to you? What's an ordinal variable? There's order to them. There is some kind of order. If I just use words like good, better, best, what's the order? What's the highest rated one? Best. And the next higher rated one? Better. And the lowest rated one? In that case is good. So ordinal variables have some kind of order. That's what they have. Do they have nominal characteristics?
Yes.
Absolutely. Every ordinal variable is also a nominal variable. While we can order best, better, good, they're also their names. If I ask you to line up from tallest to shortest, we can do that. I don't have to take a rule and evaluate your height any other way. I can just have you line up from tallest to shortest. And the tallest person is tallest, that's their name, and then their second, third, fourth, down to 14. In this room at least. Okay? Ordinal variables. Anything else about ordinal variables that you discovered or?
It's qualitative.
Well, in a sense, everything is, all of them are qualitative. All of them are qualitative.
Are they all
No, they have a-
quantitative?
Huh?
Are they all quantitative?
Oh, all the variables that we'll use have quantitative characteristics, even a nominal variable. That's the quantity of it.
We know that
That's
they're
quantitative.
in a rank, but we don't know like the
So,
variance, like
a
how
ranked
much.
variable is an ordinal variable.
Yeah, but we
It's
don't
another
know
word
how
for it.
much better it is. Like, what's the difference between good and better? Like, what's the little middle zone, little
Yeah.
gray?
Is there a
area?
middle zone?
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
But we don't
Okay.
know what it is. Like,
So, you know, we have this order, we have this rank, we have this line them up kind of thing. Now let's jump up one more and talk about an interval variable. Interval variables have every quality of a nominal variable. They have every quality of an ordinal variable. But they have one other quality.
The distance between is regular.
And that is that the distance between values is defined and they're equal appearing intervals. Okay? What is the interval between 6'2" and 6'7"? 5 inches. Okay? What's the interval between 5'1" and 5'6"? 5 inches. Those intervals are the same. Okay? They're equal intervals between values. Right? Now, let's talk about the ordinal variable, best to better. What's the interval between best to better?
we don't know.
We don't know, but there is an interval,
Close,
isn't there?
but,
Could be
yeah.
very close,
Could be
could be
really-
very distant. We don't know what the interval is. We don't know what this interval is. How about the distance between better and good? We don't know it either. That doesn't make them equal. We don't know either one of them. We just know the order of them. So, interval variables have that characteristic, that the intervals are equal appearing. Got to be careful with those a little bit though, too, in terms of scales of measurement, okay? Not just levels of measurement, but scales of measurement. Let me give you, for example, what is the difference between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 48 degrees Fahrenheit?
8 degrees.
8 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. What's the difference between 82 degrees Fahrenheit and 90 degrees Fahrenheit? 8 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Is that the same as the difference between 17 degrees Celsius and 25 degrees Celsius? It's 8 degrees.
But the nominal difference indicates
There's-
a variation
Yeah,
in quantity.
there is a difference in that scale. 17 to 25 is the same as 0 to 8 Celsius. If you're old like me, you know what else we call it? Other than Celsius?
Centigrade.
Centigrade.
Centigrade. See, Kyle knows that. That must be a core thing or something. Some old dude taught you centigrade. Now we don't hear that term used anymore. You know, students, what are you talking about, centigrade? Why in the world they call it centigrade?
Hundreds.
Huh?
It's a more logical system. It's based on tens. It's based-
Both of them are based on 10. Why do they call it centigrade?
There's 100 between boiling and freezing.
For water, and water only. 0 is freezing, and 100 is boiling, And that's what they use. That's just true for that. It's not true for, mercury. When mercury freezes, or it's not true for alcohol. When alcohol freezes, or when alcohol boils, it isn't 0 to 100, but it is for water. And so we use that. Call it centigrade because of that. Duh. We really like, in research, we really like to use interval level variables. We try to make everything, we try to measure it on interval scale variables. But we don't normally worry about this, we may have does an interval variable have ordinal and nominal characteristics?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely does. One other level, ratio. What makes a ratio variable?
Constant 0.
A what?
It has a absolute 0 point.
It has an absolute 0. An absolute 0 being the absence of whatever you're measuring. So Celsius, which has a 0, and Fahrenheit, which has a 0, is an absolute. Okay? Height has an absolute. I don't know anyone that's 0 inches tall, but there's an absolute 0. If we have, what's the advantage of having an absolute 0? Does it have all the characteristics of the interval scale? Yeah, all of these, they're going up in the scale, so it has nominal, ordinal, and interval characteristics, but it has one other characteristic that makes it a ratio